Hello and welcome to today's on-demand webinar. Today we are exploring the subject of mobile device security, looking at the threat landscape, what are the challenges for the IT department, and learning how you can protect your business. Today, navigating this very real and interesting topic is Ben Jones, CEO of Traced, a zero-trust mobile threat defense solution. Before founding Traced, Ben worked as a tech support agent before following his passion into cybersecurity and has worked with some of the biggest names in tech, including Intel, McAfee, and Sophos. In his spare time, Ben enjoys geeking out, programming, and solving puzzles with friends. He plays the drums and enjoys outdoor pursuits in the Oxfordshire countryside, which sounds lovely. Before we speak to Ben, I want to give you a quick overview of CommSec. Founded in 2013, CommSec are an MSSP, a managed security service provider, and we pride ourselves on offering our clients sensible cyber security, demystifying some of the complexity around cybersecurity. Our four main pillar services are SOC, which is our Security Operations Center, CheckScan Plus, a vulnerability scanning platform that scans application websites and IT infrastructure, our testing and auditing services, and third-party solutions such as endpoint protection, anti-malware, password management, amongst others. We also have a digital forensics department which investigates incidents for our clients. We've now got 26 employees across a number of departments, and our accreditations include ISO 27001, Information Security Management, which we recently renewed, passing with flying colours. Cyber Essentials certified. We are Microsoft Silver Partners and a proud member of Cyber Ireland. And just a bit of news to finish up on. Recently, we were delighted to announce that we have chosen finalist in the services category at the Small Firms Association Awards in 2022, with the overall winners expected to be announced in January. So Traced app. I wanted to show you a screenshot of the Play Store on the Android device. You can see that it's a well-established app. It's over 100,000 downloads and over 6,000 reviews with an average of 5-star in ratings. So I want to congratulate Ben and his team on a huge achievement in reaching those milestones.
Thanks, Darren. Congratulations to CommSec as well for the Small Firms Association nomination. I'll keep my fingers crossed for you guys. Fantastic news. So yes, the aim of today's session, I guess, this on-demand webinar today is to equip you all with an understanding of those top mobile security threats to your business, basically, and explain how you can best protect your organization against them. So to assist and kind of run through there, I will just share my screen here. So yes, thanks for the intro there, Dara. Not much more to say about me beyond the CEO and co-founder here at Traced. Here at Traced, we are a team of mobile privacy and security experts who protect businesses against cyber attacks and data breaches by securing their smartphones and tablets with our mobile threat defense app. I'd like to start by just giving a bit of background about the sort of genesis of Traced here. As Dara mentioned, I'm get up to some geekery in my spare time, and it was this exact geekery that actually resulted in Traced being founded in the first place. So myself and my business partner Matt, I'm going to wind the clock back to 2019. We would spend our evenings doing hackathons, which, to be honest, are absolutely as geeky as they sound. We'd get a takeaway in, look to solve some hacking-based challenges, capture the flag challenges, and also research into emerging threats. And it was from these very sessions, something that we noticed time and time again over time was this increase, this gradual and in fact rapid increase in quantity and severity, really, of mobile targeted cyber attacks. And in fact, throughout this time, mobile targeted attacks shot up 1,400% between 2016 through to 2020. And the reason for this is because our mobiles, they now hold an increasing amount of access to company data, as well as our personal lives. They're kind of the devices where our personal and professional lives sort of meld together in many ways. And it's this increase in access to company data, informations and systems that has caused mobile targeted attacks to continue to rise, and in fact they're continuing on this trajectory today as cyber criminals have really shifted focus and are now targeting unsecured mobile devices as they are such a low-hanging fruit for them. And back in 2019, well, when Matt and I saw this happening firsthand, we also saw the direct repercussions. So businesses were suffering cyber attacks like ransomware attacks, for example, data breaches, and of course fines as well off the back of that. And this was all because of their unsecured mobile devices. And we're going to drill down into exactly what types of threats we're continuing to see today. Whilst there were some solutions at the time, mobile threat defense solutions, that were designed to protect businesses against these mobile threats, we saw a number of blockers to adoption really that resulted in the majority of businesses not being able to sufficiently adopt mobile security practices in their business. And such blockers include the solutions that were there were very expensive, complicated, complicated to use, complicated to deploy from both an admin and a user perspective. They had ineffective protection technologies, so they very much relied on kind of signature-based detection, the sort of big long list of known threats, which meant that they weren't able to catch stuff that wasn't yet known, of which the majority of mobile threats, again, that were coming through the door were unknown, and hence it wasn't these approaches weren't able to keep up with the quantity of mobile threats that were out there. And also one of the main blockers really was around BYOD and businesses adopting BYOD for their mobiles, where they would allow employees to access company resources like email and systems from personal devices. And whilst this makes great financial and business sense, the security solutions that were out there, mobile threat defense solutions, very much focused more around security and less around employee privacy, which meant that employee privacies were simply rejecting the solutions on the grounds of privacy. They weren't necessarily comfortable with their employer seeing which websites they accessed, for example, or their location. And it was this kind of combination of I guess, kind of hindering qualities that was preventing adoption and leaving the vast majority of businesses unprotected and unable to protect against mobile threats. And to talk through the kind of top 3 mobile threats that we're seeing today, and we see a lot of threats on a daily basis through our threat intelligence telemetry, and the most prolific threat that we see on mobiles is mobile phishing. Just to be clear what phishing is a method of tricking users into giving away their access to their information in an unauthorized way. So it could be that they get tricked into giving away their login credentials or maybe some financial information, for example. And today, mobile phishing is one of the top attack vectors and can often be the first link in a ransomware attack chain. Now, when you see the word phishing, your minds may naturally gravitate towards email, because typically the association between phishing, the link between phishing and email is pretty strong. It was the medium of choice for attackers for a long period of time. But what I'm about to say might shock you, which is that, in fact, nowadays, 87% of successful mobile phishing attacks take place outside of email. Because attackers have shifted focus as email security features and email security gateways and phishing training and awareness around email has become better and better over time. The mobile mediums have remained relatively, again, unprotected and unaddressed in that fashion. So hence you can have, as in your organization, and you should have an effective secure email gateway combined with sort of phishing based education and possibly simulation training in your organization, but this may still leave you exposed on your mobiles, as the solutions don't cover mediums like SMS. And the training that staff have, for example, to spot phishing emails on a desktop and laptop is very different, and it doesn't really apply to mobile in the same way. And we'll go through exactly sort of what some of the sort of visible nuances and differences are between mobile phishing and email in a second. But this is largely the reasons why attackers have chosen mobile phishing as their preferred method of compromising, of deploying their phishing campaigns and attacks. No, you've probably seen emails and texts like these. You see 2 out of 3 of them are Microsoft. This isn't us picking on Microsoft. It's the cyber criminals who are picking on Microsoft. In fact, they are the most picked on brand for phishing, with 29% of all phishing attacks globally targeting Microsoft. Other spoof brands include the likes of Amazon, DHL, Google, for example. And unfortunately, as you can see, it's very easy to fall victim for a phishing scam. So, for example, on the left of the screen here, you will see a genuine. This is a genuine fish. Okay, maybe a poor choice of words there. This is a fish because phishing, of course, isn't genuine by nature. But this is an actual phishing email. But as you can see, it's very easy to fall victim. It looks largely very similar to the standard Microsoft 365 login page, the sort of authentication page there. You can even see, so far as one of the visible clues that we get taught on mobile and desktop is to hover over a link and then to check the link in the browser bar. But you can see on mobile, because the screen's smaller, there's less real estate, we tend to interact with our phones in a more impulsive way. All of these kind of characteristics combined mean that the bar is actually displaying a message. So in fact, the attackers have used that to mask the actual URL. So it's not on Microsoft.com at all. It's actually on a domain that belongs to the attacker. But it's not as obvious on mobile devices. And of course, email-based phishing simulation and training may not necessarily cover this in the same way. And it's these reasons combined that result in the reality that enterprise users are 3 times as likely to fall victim for a phishing email or phishing link, in fact, on their mobile device as they are on a desktop or laptop computer. So what does a phishing attack look like? And I guess the kind of more important question here is what are the cyber criminals trying to achieve? What are they trying to do with their mobile phishing, with their mobile phishes? Well, this process shows the sort of end-to-end, I guess, attack chain of a successful mobile phishing attack. And it's also important to bear in mind that this whole process is just the first link in part of a longer attack. So attackers could be, for example, trying to deploy ransomware. Dara, as you mentioned there, ransomware up 400% throughout the course of the pandemic. Well, this is often the first link in that ransomware attack chain, as attackers will use mobile phishing to gain a set of working credentials, maybe an email address, password, an MFA token, and go and use those to detonate their ransomware attacks on an RDP server, for example, or maybe on some desktops and laptops. But one thing's for sure, and that's that all phishing ultimately wants to steal personal information in some way, shape, and form. And mobile phishing goes about this in 2 different ways. You can see in the middle of the attack chain, either the mobile phishing attack will try to drop malware onto the device, which can be used to harvest data, or they may display a spoofed website. So, for example, looking at that which we saw in the previous slide, when we were showing there was a spoofed website for Microsoft's logging page, for example, which again can be used to steal credentials, but it may also be trying to steal financial information. Again, depends on what the attackers trying to get. But all in all, they're always trying to get that data and send it back to the attacker so they can use it for nefarious means, really. And once the attacker gains access to this data, unfortunately, the outcome is normally pretty severe. In fact, it results in a sort of catastrophe of different outcomes, such as I mentioned, ransomware attacks that can lead to fines, that can lead to damages. Could be a data breach that again holds fines and damages associated to it. It could also result in, again, lost earnings. There's many different outcomes here, and unfortunately, it's never a particularly nice place to be. Now, you may think in your organization, and you may well have a kind of policy of deploying only iOS devices, for example, or you may have a mix between Android or iOS, or you may be Android only. But for those customers that do have, for those businesses, if your business has iPhones in your estate, whether that's personally owned or corporate owned, then you may be concerned to hear that, in fact, iOS users are not inherently more secure or more protected against phishing. In fact, 63% of phishing attacks take place on iOS and not on Android. So what can you do? How can you protect your organization against the scourge of mobile phishing? Well, the most effective security strategy that you can take is by combining effective user education, which is based on user training around not just traditional and approaches to phishing, for example, but also mobile phishing, which again is including mobile phishing in that training. Also making sure it's factored into any security policies that you have in a comprehensive way, not just as a tick box, but also in a way that can, again, assist users to make sure that they're protected. But naturally, even the best training in the world, even social engineers fall victim for social engineering, because at times things slip through the cracks. Occasionally a fish comes in, we get caught off guard, and it catches us in that environment. So to protect yourself when that does inevitably happen, it's important to have the right set of automated tools. It's kind of safety net of tools to protect your organization and to block any phishing links if users, for example, get caught off guard and inadvertently end up falling victim for a phishing attack. To manage the risk, this will enable you as a business to manage the risk appropriately and ensure that you prevent any of the outcomes, any of the negative outcomes which we referenced previously. The second threat to businesses is man-in-the-middle attacks or compromised Wi-Fi networks. Now, just to be clear, man is short for manipulator in this sense. So because it's aptly named as such, because in fact, this is exactly what's happening. It's when a manipulator, a manipulative device is sat in between your employee's mobile device and the internet, for example. And we all know, in fact, you may have a policy in your organization now to advise employees not to connect to public Wi-Fi networks. But many employees don't actually know why that is. And to be honest, even those that do understand why that is, and that man in the middle attacks, for example, are kind of your devices are exposed to man in the middle attacks if you connect to public Wi-Fi networks, even they may on occasion be in a situation where they've got important work to do. They're in a hotel or a coffee shop, don't get any signal, maybe run out of data. There's free Wi-Fi. Naturally, they may still jump onto that Wi-Fi and go ahead and conduct whatever work it is that they need to do. Well, unfortunately, man-in-the-middle attacks, they're not obvious. When the device connects, it doesn't come up with a big banner saying natively on the device saying this network is compromised. There's man-in-the-middle interference occurring on. So without the right tools in place, it can be an invisible attack to your users. So as I mentioned, with this scenario, if there's a manipulator sat between your devices, your employees' devices and the internet, they can effectively manipulate the internet for those devices. They could use it to steal passwords, for example, steal financial information, intercept emails. They may even go so far as to present manipulated web pages and deploy malware, for example, down to the device. And the fact that the Wi-Fi network itself is unsecured, doesn't have a password, it means it's unauthenticated. So there's no way of knowing whether you are actually connected to the coffee shop Wi-Fi network or whether you're connected to somebody sat in the corner in the proximity of your device who could be operating as that manipulator. Or it could be that, in fact, they've compromised the network itself. So whilst you are connected to the coffee shop network, the network itself could be under attack. And it's these reasons why 45% of CISOs feel that it's their biggest security challenge is that users are connecting to unsecured Wi-Fi networks to access business resources, because it puts that integral business data at risk of being exposed and at risk of breach. So how often does these types of attacks happen? Well, unfortunately, we've done the research. We've done the research, and unfortunately, it's about 1 in 20 public Wi-Fi networks are exhibiting some type of active interference an active man-in-the-middle attack. This means that 1 in 20 network, if you connect to 20 different public Wi-Fi networks, on average, your devices likely to connect to a network with a man-in-the-middle attack, which means that your data can be hoovered up in the process, even go so far as to have malware dropped onto it, for example. So how can you protect yourselves? How can you manage this risk for your organization? Well, number one, similar to previous, educate your users on the danger of public Wi-Fi. At the very least, this is going to distill down, this is going to reduce the amount of users that connect to public Wi-Fi networks sort of willy-nilly, as you know, just choosing the public Wi-Fi networks as preference over 4G, unless they absolutely need to. But as we mentioned previously, from time to time, users are still going to connect to public Wi-Fi networks. And when that does happen, again, having the right automated tool set in place that can assist you that can notify your users if there is malicious interference detected and advise them to disconnect, and also inform the business of exactly what happened. So, for example, if a user in accounts goes down to the local coffee shop Wi-Fi, currently if they sit on the Wi-Fi network and do the accounts, for example, the monthly accounts, and that network is under attack, the user, the accountant, has no idea, no visual indication that there's anything wrong, there's any threat. But by having mobile threat defense in place, by having Trace mobile threat defense, the Trace app will scan the networks every time that they connect to a Wi-Fi network, inform the user, advise the user to disconnect. When the accountant then disconnects from the network, it will inform the business that there was a threat, but it didn't result in a data breach as the user disconnected in a prompt and timely manner, and therefore prevented any potential data threat, any potential data breach from that threat in that particular instance. The third and final threat, in fact, that we're going to run through today is around malware apps. Now, this is very much more of a threat, or a more common and more prolific threat for Android than it is iOS. iOS, of course, is still there is malware for iOS. It's by no means invulnerable, or by no means completely safe against malware. But to put it in perspective, 30% of all device infections are mobile, 28% are Android, and 2% are iOS. So there's malware strains like Exodus and Pegasus that affect iOS, but again, it's much more of a prolific threat for Android. It's much more likely that your organization, the risk is higher because the likelihood of there being a malicious app on your employees' devices in your business is much higher on Android than it is on iOS. So what makes an app malicious? Well, some apps are created evil. So again, if we kind of went into all of the examples of malware apps and exactly how they work, we might be here for quite a while. So possibly we could always do a session on it another time, of course. But to offer a few examples in the mix, there's malicious apps like TrickMo, for example. You may be familiar with the TrickBot banking Trojan, which is a banking Trojan for Windows, commonly used to deploy ransomware onto networks. Well, they have a malicious app component for Android that basically steals MFA tokens from infected devices, and it's used by the TrickBot gang as part of their attack. Similarly, you've got there's one that's particularly prolific at the moment called FluBot, which spreads via SMS. If you get SMS-based phishing from maybe logistic companies or masquerading as banks, for example, there's a strong likelihood that they're from that's trying to spread FluBot, and that can lead to data breaches because it can steal, of course, data from the device if it infects the device. But something else that FluBot does is because it spreads via SMS, once it compromises a device, it has the potential to send tens of thousands of tens of thousands of SMS messages every single day out to infect other devices. So it'll try to worm its way onto as many devices as possible. And that can very quickly rack up a lot of excess charges, a lot of unanticipated and contingent costs in terms of excess SMS and data charges. Other apps are just a bit fast and loose with their privacy and security practices. Well, this is commonly referred to as leaky apps. You may see as a kind of term given to these types of apps. These are apps where the developers haven't really taken the right amount of diligence, haven't followed secure development processes. to provide a specific example, there was a family locator app a couple of years ago, for example, in 2019, that was enabled basically parents to track the location of their children, and within there they had a MongoDB, so their database was hosted in Azure, and they inadvertently and accidentally made it public facing, meaning anybody can just simply, if they knew the address of that database, could go and pull out information, which in this particular instance could have been GPS location data on children, which of course is, as far as special PII goes, it's pretty severe and pretty detrimental type of data, I guess, kind of classification of data that you don't want to be public facing. It's very much designed to be confidential and private. So what damage can malware do? Well, as we mentioned, it's very similar sort of in terms to phishing. You know, it could be trying to steal credentials, could be trying to go so far as to drop keyloggers onto the device and send as much data from the device into the hands of the attacker. It could also overlay payment screens, for example, onto the device to get you to think you're paying somebody, whereas you're actually paying the criminals. It could access your contacts. It can send, again, messages, SMS messages to spread to other devices. And it can even give itself additional permissions. It can even give itself additional permissions to, again, further exacerbate the problem and get it to steal more and more data about you, or about your employees, in fact. And one other point to note here is if your employees are using their personal devices to access work email, cloud systems, or any other business resources for that matter, a malicious app can be a very kind of quick and highly damaging way into your organization with very far-reaching consequences. And this is one of the main reasons why businesses are a bit wary of implementing BYOD, because, as I mentioned at the beginning, BYOD makes great financial and business sense, but it's because of employee privacy combined with sort of how businesses can secure those BYOD devices effectively that are currently blocking many organizations from adopting it. Well, fortunately, it is now possible to implement BYOD securely. And the way that you could do this for your organization is you can use a combination of, you could use mobile threat defense to, again, detect and remediate any malicious apps that your employees may have on their devices. And in this statement, you'll see that I'm advising to install to adopt a mobile threat defense solution that has signatureless malware app detection. And that's a key word here, is signatureless, because, as I mentioned at the beginning, signature-based detection is a bit more of a kind of archaic way of detecting malware. It can be effective at protecting against known threats, but doesn't offer any protection against unknown threats. So, which again, constantly new samples, new variants, new pieces of malware being developed. So this big long list of all of the threats of yesterday is not going to protect your organization against the big long list of threats from today. So it's a case of, if you want to have the most effective protection and ensure your business is protected against both known and unknown threats, adopting a mobile threat defense solution like Traced, which uses artificial intelligence to detect both known and unknown threats and the characteristics based on their characteristics. You can also, in the equation, use mobile device management combined with mobile threat defense to sort of, I guess, segment the data a little bit to be able to protect your company data and keep a bit of segregation between the personal and the sort of work profile. But just having that in the mobile device management alone isn't absolute in terms of its protection, I guess, because if the device itself is compromised, if the user has a malware app installed on there and the device is compromised, then any container on that device can equally be considered compromised as well. So it's the most effective and the best possible protection for your mobiles is by combining mobile threat defense and mobile device management together. And on that note, I mentioned a few kind of features there and a little bit about Traced, but Traced is a mobile threat defense solution that delivers protection to these top threats and to the other threats that Dara listed earlier on in the webinar here, and it enables you to manage the risks of your mobiles to prevent data breaches and cyber attacks, and of course prevent any costs, any damages, any sort of time constraints, and any resource consumption, contingent resource consumption that would come off the back of any of those scenarios. So if you want to protect yourself, protect your organization as best as possible, and save yourself time and costs in the process, and enable yourself to meet compliance, then please do get in touch with us. Get in touch with CommSec. The details here on the screen. To reward you, I guess, for taking the time today to learn about the top 3 threats to mobile, we'd like to offer you an exclusive 3 months of free protection with Trace. So please do get in touch with the CommSec team here to claim your 3 months of free protection as soon as possible before it runs out. So with that, I guess, Dara, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions. I'd imagine you may have some burning questions about mobile threats. Here we go.
Ben, thanks so much for that. It was really useful and informative. Yeah, let's move over to some Q&As that we have prepared for the webinar. Ben, the first one we have is, can we trust our phone's built-in protection, to catch these threats?
That's a good question. So the simple answer is it's not enough. Is native protection, because as we've seen from decades of the cat and mouse game of cybersecurity, is that when vendors and operating systems introduce native protection, native security, it temporarily makes life harder for cyber criminals, but it's by no means a kind of silver bullet in the equation, because attackers will simply look and find ways, whichever way they can, to sort of circumvent that protection. And this is exactly what we see with the native protection in mobile platforms. So, for example, Android has a built-in antivirus engine called Google Play Protect, which again can protect against some of the known threats that are out there, but it's simply the case that attackers, in terms of when they develop malware, the malware app developers will develop their apps to circumvent and to avoid detection from Google Play Protect. So it's good that the inbuilt protection is kind of getting better over time, but it's simply not enough at the moment to be able to offer appropriate security really for your mobiles.
Yeah, I get that, Ben, and it's like at the start of the webinar when I mentioned, you take a laptop out of a box, you wouldn't dream about using it, without installing some endpoint protection, some antivirus on there. Our next question that we have is, in terms of mobile protection, is it going to be a big outlay in terms of budget and resources? So what can we expect there, particularly within larger organizations?
Yes, great question. Funnily enough, in fact, actually, mobile threat defense is one of the most cost-effective solutions that you can implement on your mobiles. It doesn't break the bank. It's a very effective, a very kind of strong and valuable way to protect yourselves, to detect and remediate threats on your devices without, again, going overboard and having very kind of a complex stack of very enterprise focused, enterprise grade, military grade, weapons grade security solutions in place, which again can be an effective way to protect your devices, but are ultimately a more simplistic and more, in fact, inherently in many ways inherently secure way of doing that is by bringing it all under one solution, which is what mobile threat defense can offer, and do so without coming with the price tag that many sort of larger, more complex solutions for mobile bring.
Yeah, and the IT manager then can roll it out then across the entire company network then of mobile users.
Yeah, exactly.
From central device. Yeah, no, that's great. And one thing I've found is, if the protection controls are too severe, they'll end up using their personal device for work and just ignoring their work device as well. So obviously you want people to use their work device during the course of doing their work. What would you say is the difference between your solution and many of the other solutions that are on the market for mobile protection?
Yeah, so there are, of course, other mobile threat defense solutions available. As I mentioned, the reason that myself and Matt co-founded Traced, and we developed, spent the last kind of 2 years developing Traced, and we're now protecting almost 200,000 mobile devices around the globe. And the reason that we've gone on this journey and looked to make a difference and provide a better solution are because the other mobile threat defense solutions on the market, they again experienced a number of problems. Really, they had a number of blockers to being adopted within an organization. The first and foremost, I think, is around privacy. So around employee privacy. When it comes to BYOD, when it comes to corporate-owned devices, it's generally achievable for an organization to monitor the websites that are accessed on those devices, and again, really kind of lock down and obtain lots of visibility over and monitor those devices very closely. But when it comes to personal devices, it's morally it then becomes a different issue, because those devices are personal. They're, you know, we have our personal devices, and are you, in fact, we can ask ourselves this question: are you comfortable with your employer having visibility over which websites you access on your own personal mobile in order to access company email, for example, and or maybe your location, or being able to install apps on your device and take management over it? And this resulted in pushback and rejection from employees on the grounds of privacy. So hence what we've done here at Traced is we've developed a solution that considers employee privacy in absolutely every feature that we have. So for example, we have a personal privacy mode in which the organization will only see a red, amber, or green health status of those devices. So the devices themselves are protected against malware, man-in-the-middle attacks, phishing, vulnerable configuration. So they get the full mobile threat defense protection, and they can evidence that appropriate security and risk management has been taken over those devices through our dashboard, but they're not over monitoring those devices and, I guess, kind of getting an invasive amount of visibility over them. So this privacy focus that we've introduced really differentiates us from other solutions, and means that there's far fewer barriers, or there's far fewer reasons for employees to not be comfortable installing a security app on their personal mobile devices, because they can remain comfortable and reassured throughout the experience and with the solution that their privacy is not put in jeopardy in the process.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, Ben. I've been using the app on my phone recently, because I knew we had this webinar coming up, and I have to say I feel a lot safer with it, and it doesn't really infringe on anything that I do on the phone too much. So I'm definitely happier with it, so I can see just why you have so many downloads and so many good reviews. So I'm not being biased when I say that. It was really I wanted to see, you know, under the bonnet and see how it performed. So I'm delighted to give you that news.
Fantastic, thank you, and congratulations on protecting your device as well.
Great, and congratulations on yourselves. I see you're shortlisted as well for Best New Startup finalist in the Cyber Awards.
We are indeed. The draw's on the 9th of December, so fingers crossed. Fingers crossed for that one.
Excellent. And if you're watching this webinar on demand, you might see the results on the social media. So Ben, with that, I think we will wrap up our webinar for today. And if people want to get in touch with us, we'll put up the details there now of how they can get in touch with us and avail of your excellent offer of 3 months free licensing for corporate users. So thanks very much, Ben, and I will talk to you again.
Fantastic. Thanks for having me, and thanks for listening.
No problem. Mind yourself. Bye-bye now.
And you. Bye-bye.